Hey, 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 welcome to Relationships 101. I'm Pastor Sean Strickland here with my super cute, blessed, ready, and winning husband, Pastor Edwin Strickland. And we pastor Fellowship of Champions Church International, a church that's teaching people how to walk in love, live by faith, and experience God's prosperity in every area of life. And on the first Tuesday or second Tuesday of every month, we do Relationships 101. And we do that because we know that strong families make strong communities, make strong government, make strong nations, make strong churches, make strong worlds. And so, what we have attempted to do in Relationships 101 is to normalize working on healthy relationships. Now, you know what we need you to do. We need you to hashtag live and tell us where you're watching from. We need you to share it in any groups that you can share it in. We need you to tag your friends. Everybody knows somebody, so everybody knows somebody that we can all work together to have better relationships. And so, tell us where you're watching from. Tag somebody, share it in groups, and let's really get our engagement up. We had a little bit of a problem with the Edwin and Sean Strickland page, so we know that several people went there and they weren't able to get on, but now you can get on. And so as a result, let's just keep it going. How you doing tonight, babe?
I'm doing great. I'm gonna also remind you guys, let us know if you're watching on Facebook or if you happen to be watching on YouTube. We like to go back and watch our analytics, and I know a lot of people watch Relationships 101 from Facebook, which is not a problem. That's great. You can always go back and watch the replay. But we also understand that people have busy lives and that some people like to watch from YouTube because YouTube does give you the ability to at least listen, even if you have to be doing something else on your phone or your computer or multitasking in some other way. So listen, go ahead and tag. We have a special guest who's going to be with us tonight. You're not going to want to miss it. Tag all your friends and family. Those of you that are on the East Coast, it may be maybe right at supper time for you, 8 o'clock, something like that. 7 o'clock for us in Central. And for those who are on the West Coast, we know it's 5 o'clock. You're probably just getting off work. So you may be tuning in as you are commuting home. Listen, we want you to be safe. We want you to be intentional, but we also want to make sure that you are getting what's going to be given tonight because it's going to be good. I can promise you. Just want to remind you guys also, go ahead and mark your calendars early. Passion already told you the second Tuesday of each month. So you know that's going to be November the 14th will be our 11th edition of Relationships 101.
Oh, wow.
We've been doing this 10 straight months, and every month people keep asking us, can we do this? Can we do it again? Can we do it again? And, you know, we got a little special something we working on for 2024. I won't say too much about it right now because it's probably jumping the gun. I really want to, but I won't. But we got some really, really exciting things coming up.
Say it at the end.
Maybe you want to hang around to the end when we get through, and we'll share with you something we've got planned for 2024 that you are not gonna want to miss. You are, in fact, you're gonna go ahead and let your boss, let your kids, let everybody know that you're gonna need some time off because it's gonna be something that you're gonna really want to be involved in. But with that being said, I see you guys are tagging people. I see we are now on the Edwin and Sean Strickland page. And just so you know, anytime we're doing Relationships 101, one of the easiest way to get to us is to just go to Edwin and Sean, EDWINANDSHUN, one word, edwinandsean.com, and it'll take you right to the page where we'll be broadcasting from. But if you're watching us on our church page, that's fine. You're watching on my YouTube channel or Pastor Sean's YouTube channel, that's fine. Or if you're watching on our personal Facebook pages, that's fine as well. We just want you to be in the place. Ain't that right?
That's right. That's why I'm over here tagging my friends. Are you tagging your friends?
I tagged a bunch of mine earlier. I'm going to tag some more when you start talking. And then that way we don't have to both be tagging while the broadcast is going on.
I'm super excited to be here tonight. Listen, we are ready. Pastor Edwin said we blessed, we ready, and we winning. And I believe that you're really going to enjoy tonight because I think that this is going to be probably one of the most comprehensive We did an interview a couple of months ago, and we're going to do an interview tonight, right? And we are bringing to the stage somebody who we believe just has such a wide variety of information and insight to give, a lot about building healthy relationships, overcoming different life challenges and stuff. And so I am super, 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 super excited to have this guest. So I want to welcome none other than my best friend, Unika J. Can you bring her to the stage?
Absolutely.
Now, I just said that because, listen, you need to tag Paul and tell Paul to get on here right now so he can watch this, so the whole world can know who's the best friend. It's me.
So we starting out hot.
Welcome to Relationships 101. We're super excited to have you. You just confirmed with Pastor Edwin that you're going to be doing back in December, doing a special thing with him with Ed Talk.
In fact, let me tell y'all right now, you don't want to miss Ed Talk on December the 19th, because Unika and I are going to have a conversation about leadership and what leadership means to move us into the next realm of success. You're not going to want to miss it. She got so much to share. We ain't even going to do this tonight, but you don't want to miss it on the 19th.
I just wanted to give the people a little tip.
I appreciate it.
I just wanted to give them a little tip. So again, if you're, tell us where you're watching from. If this is your first time watching, we're going to jump into this. So Unika, one of the goals of Relationships 101 is to really normalize working on relationships. One of the things that we said when we first started this is that so many people fail in relationships because I don't know who told us we automatically know how to do relationships well. That just because we love somebody that we know how to do relationships well. And I think I was telling you that when we were back in the green room, that you have some of the most broad experiences that I think that you bring so much insight here. And I really just want to kind of go through the gamut of your life to talk about all the lessons you've learned about relationships, how your relationship with God has played a part into that. And I did write questions, so everybody should be really proud. So it's not a freestyle, but we are not limited to the questions because I am sure that one question is going to lead to another question. This is what I need y'all to do. Facebook fam and YouTube fam, I need you to get all of your people here, because if you have ever heard Unika J speak before, you know this is going to be hot. You know we can always count on her to be real, to be raw, to be relevant, and to be Holy Spirit led as she does that, which is actually a super neat line to walk. And so we are ready. And if you're ready, could you welcome Unika and just tell Unika hi, and then we're going to ask our first question. You want to say anything as we're warming up? We're waiting on people to tell you hi.
I'll just say hi back. I can't see the comments and
stuff.
Well,
one of the things I would like you to do, because there are people on here who do know you, but there are people who don't. So before we get into just the first question about just like your upbringing and all that stuff, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing right now, because I think it helps to give people an idea of who they're in the room with, who they can glean from. So if you don't mind, while they're saying hi to you all in the comment sections, if you can just come tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do right now.
So I'm Unika J. I live outside of the greater Philadelphia area. I am the founder and president of Rewrite 365, which is a training and performance improvement consulting firm where we focus on leadership, strategy, and culture. And so we have the unique opportunity to work with Fortune 100 companies all the way down to small churches and small organizations and nonprofits. And so if you've ever seen organizations that say they have great places to work or top places to work, we are one of the organizations behind that to help people get on those lists. And so that's probably the number one thing that we've been doing over the last 2 years. I'm also an executive coach, and I enjoy coaching some C-suite executives across the country. And so that's more or less my corporate experience. From a ministry perspective, I've been in ministry for a long time. I was going to try and give you a year, but I mean, this is a long time. Like, I think I may have been 21 or 22 when I first got my first title, if you will. And I've held every title that could be that you could have, with the exception of bishop. And I don't think I'm supposed to hold that one. And so I have let that one go. But I started out in children's ministry, went into youth ministry, became an elder, became a pastor, been a co-pastor, all of those different things. And so I've been in ministry a long time. In my local church right now, I oversee our single moms ministry. I'm a part of our women's leadership team, and I'm also a small group leader for our women's Bible study. And so I like to say I'm saved and sanctified. I think, hopefully the Lord agrees when the time comes that I get where I need to be. Was that enough?
That's
I
really
have 5 kids. I'm raising my grandson. All my kids are grown. This is why I commented on your status today, Pastor Edwin. You give us all those books about what to do when you're expecting. Somebody needs to write a book about adult kids. And so I have 5 adult children I'm raising. I have my 6-year-old grandson, Trey, who I'm raising. So I'm a nana, I'm a grandmother. And that's about it. And I'm single.
And wait, are you single and
she's
ready
single,
to mingle?
and she has brothers who check before she mingles.
That part. And if they ain't right, they never even meet the brothers. I already know how it's going. You ain't, you can't, you are nameless and faceless. So,
well, that's great. I think that's awesome because, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You having 5 kids and you're raising your grandson, and just the whole gamut of everything. And so I think now we are ready to get into some of these questions. I'm really almost told Sean, I said, I would just like to kind of just be here tonight and hear the conversation. So she's probably going to do a lot of the heavy lifting tonight, and I'm just going to kind of be here listening and maybe ask some questions to maybe just when I need you to add a little more to something. So I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for being here.
That's really cool. If I'm going to do the heavy lifting, what are you going to give me for that? Because this is a joint venture.
You want me to chime in on that? Because
I do not want you to chime in.
She wants you to chime in.
I do not want you to chime in.
Okay. She got to realize who want to see. This is my kind of thing right here. Having Unica on here. You got to watch yourself tonight.
You know what, y'all
watch yourself.
That's why they want to be here December 19th.
So off the chain.
They want to be here.
Okay, so let's pray right quick, and then we'll ask the first question. Okay. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we pray that tonight, as we dive deep in relationships and Unica shares her story, that it will bring healing and restoration for many. It will bring enlightenment to others, and that we will all realize that, God, you want to prune us, you want to heal us, and you want us to have the best relationships possible, days of heaven on earth. And so we thank you for it now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So you can ask the first question at least.
Okay.
You can handle the first.
Yeah. So the first question, that's why I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you were doing now, because sometimes people hear about where we are in a particular stage in our life and they go, oh, wow, she must have come up from this and this in order to get to that place. And so that's kind of why I wanted to start there. So I want you to talk a little bit about your upbringing, a little bit about your family structure, about your siblings, about the early years of your life, and just kind of where you started. Because what I want people to see is that it's never about where we start. It's about where we end up. And whether we're talking about relationships or our personal lives or whatever, it doesn't matter how we started. It's about what happens at the end. So I love for you to share your story with us.
So I grew up in an impoverished single mother household. I had regular connections and interactions with my father. He has always been a very steady person in my life. But I grew up with a mother who battled mental illness, and primarily I would imagine that was depression. And so she, started a lot of things. She was a big dreamer. She had a lot of things that she wanted to do, and a lot of things that she wanted to accomplish. And she loved us the best way that she knew how. But I am very familiar with several things. I'm familiar with electric being cut off and us running an extension cord to the neighbor's house to at least get some lights into the house. I'm familiar with milk that I think was powdered. It came in a bag and you would add water and turn it into real milk. And I think the same was true for some form of eggs. I'm familiar with the large blocks of cheese. They come in a box. I'm familiar with getting Christmas presents that are wrapped in white tissue paper that, your mom goes to pick up with a basket of food. And so we grew up in a situation where my mother tried very hard to make ends meet. And oftentimes they didn't touch. And so I remember us swapping out cars a lot. We'd go outside, we'd be ready to go. The car is not there. And so then we had to, she would always just, it was interesting because she would go, oh, okay, we have to figure this out. She'd go back in the house before cell phones and pagers and all that. And she'd get back on the phone and she'd call and someone would take us to where we needed to be. And so even the fact, with that, my mother worked multiple jobs. And so I was responsible really early in life. I was what these kids know nothing about, which is a latchkey kid. And so just like I have this pendant, I used to have a key that was around my neck that was under my, was under my shirt. And I was responsible for getting my sister on and off the Head Start bus, getting our TV dinners put into the stove because we didn't have, the microwaves at the time. You had these metal TV dinners. I don't know if anybody remembers those, but getting those into the stove. And my mother, my mom, she tried her hand at dating. And so there would be times where things were really good because there were men in the house or a man in the house at the time that would, contribute a little more. In addition to her working, she did hair in our kitchen. And so that, I had my one sister who lived with me. I had a brother who lived with his father out of town. But then when I went to my father's house, it was a little bit different. My father was married, has been married since I was 2.5 years old. And there, my dad has a spirit of adoption. He is actually gifted in with that. And so he would adopt children. I remember one time I went over to my dad's house. I used to like being over there because I was the only child. And like I adored that time because I didn't have to deal with my sister who was back at my mother's house. And I went over to my father's house. He picked me up like he normally would on the weekends. And we drove over and there were 2 additional kids there. And I've been the same as I am now. I was the same back then. So I was not about the welcome wagon. I was trying to understand why there were additional kids in the house. And my father, him having a background in psychology, probably didn't map that all the way out appropriately because he probably, I don't think he thought I'm creating trauma for my daughter. But I got there and I have a brother and a sister, and I rejected that. I rejected the whole concept, everything that had to go with that, and so. That was a shocker for me. And my dad and his wife went on to have 4 more daughters. He adopted another set of kids. And so I have a ton of siblings. I don't count because then people get mad when you get the count wrong. But I'm probably one of 9, 10, or 11 folks, and I know them all. At least I think I know them all. Maybe I talk to my dad later, but I know all of my siblings. And so, and we have, some of us have decent relationships. Some of us don't.
Oh, I appreciate the honesty. That's why we love to have you here to have this kind of conversation because, so let's talk about this. One of the things that you said is that you loved being at your father's house, right? And then your father added all these kids, which created some trauma. Living at your mom's house in poverty, having so much responsibility, that created some trauma, right? And there is this moment that I think I've heard you talk about where you wanted to go and stay with your dad and then you didn't. Do you remember how old you were when that happened?
It was a little bit after I was probably around 7 years old. So it was not only that I wanted to go live with my father also filed to get sole custody of me. And so I went through a traumatic experience that I think we're going to talk about based on the run sheet. And after that, my father decided that he would walk through a process where my mother was declared unfit and that I would go and live with him. But my mother orchestrated for me to have a narrative that would prevent that from happening. And I wanted to be at my dad's house. I mean, there was a lot of stability. And that, by that time I decided that the siblings could stay and they were okay. And so, I got playmates over there that I get along with that are about my age. And they, but I really, really, really wanted to stay with my dad. My dad is like my hero. That's my guy. And he, and he's always been that, for me. We have our differences. We go back and forth or whatever. But I still stand at attention if he calls, he's like, especially he reads my Facebook posts. And he if he come in the comments, that means he's feeling real froggy. But often I'll get a text or a phone call. You know, he'll just the phone will ring, and I'm like, oh man, I know it's the post. And he's like, so if y'all ever see posts just disappear, just know Daddy
what
called.
happened.
You know, he's like, I think you know, I'm like, okay, Daddy, I'm sorry, I take it down. But in that, you know, I really, really, really wanted to be with my father. And my mother and you know, I loved her and still love her. She's passed away. But that environment I knew was not conducive to it. It was not conducive to who I believe even then that God was calling me to be. And I knew, you know, she was absent. She was doing a lot, you know, that she wanted to do. I dealt with a ton of different things. I dealt with early on, even before age 6. I would get up and turn the stove off because she would turn the gas on because she wanted us all to die, you know, and so she would be trying to commit suicide. So she had, you know, suicidal tendencies. And so it's interesting because even for me, I sleep very light even now. Like I'm just not a deep sleeper because as a young, I would wait and I would sometimes doze off and I'd wait and, you know, and then one day she caught me turning it off. And she said, so it's you come out and turn it off. And I said, yeah, you know, because I don't like the way that it smells. And I mentioned that to my father. And that kind of also, this was a little bit before, you know, I got hurt. And my dad, you know, was like, tell me more about that. And it turned out that early on in her life, she had tried to commit suicide, you know, when they were together the same way. And so, you know, just that environment for me, I felt like I always had to be on. Like, I think, Sean, you call it, what do you call me? Battle ready or something? You say, stand down or whatever it is, because I'm ready, right? I'm ready to tackle things. And so, but that comes from that childhood. And at my dad's house, I had peace. You know, at my dad's house, I was allowed to be a child. Someone made my lunch. Someone drew my bath water for me. Someone put my clothes out. Now it's kind of independent, so I didn't really appreciate all that at the time, but there was a level of peace. You know, my stepmother cooked for us. She had conversations with us. And so that, you know, there were some things, I mean, and there were some dynamics there that were off at times, but at the same time, that was better than where I was. And so I wanted that that full time. And so that, you know, that sparked a little bit of resentment for my home life. And, you know, and where I was currently living, because I really wanted to be with my father.
So you had this resentment, but still you went along with your mother's narrative to stay.
Yes.
Did you know why you did it at the time? And do you know why you did it now?
So I think similar to most kids who are in a situation where they have a parent that is dealing with something, whether it's mental illness, addiction, whatever the case may be. Not only was I my sister's caretaker, but I was my mother's caretaker also, right? And so if my mom was crying and I heard her weeping in her room, I would go and get tissue. I would be beside the bed telling her everything was okay, not even fully understanding what was wrong. And so there was a level of commitment that I had to making sure she was okay. Right. Even when my mother passed away, she passed away in my house because she, you know, found herself in a position where she was unable to work. And so we moved her into our house to take care of her, to make sure that she was okay. And so that was kind of our story. You know, that was there were times even as a teenager that I paid the security deposit and the first month's rent for places that we would move into because we would have situations, you know, what caused us to have to move. And so from the time I started working, which was very early, I started working when I bought my own school clothes, I think at age 10. I worked at the Ohio State Fair and I used to pick the milk cans up when people threw the balls. My job was to pick it up and they would give me $25 a day. I worked there the whole day. They give me $25 and I'd spend like $10 on it on elephant ears and, you know, sailor hats with airbrush before I got to the front gate. But Sean, I had a real attachment to taking care of my mom. And so although I wanted to be with my father and I knew that was the best place for me, I couldn't fathom leaving not only my little sister, who I had no idea who would be able to take care of her. And then who would take care of my mom? Who would make sure that the doors were locked? Who would make sure that the stove was cut off? Who would make sure that, you know, when she sat, that you'd be able to tell her that it was going to be okay? Who would be able to do those things? And my mother often talked also, this is interesting, about what my father paid in child support. So I also knew me leaving that house also took money out of that house. And I was committed to fostering that relationship with my mother in my role as a caregiver, opposed to her constantly being in a role as a caregiver.
You know, one of the things that we know from research, it tells us that so much of who we are, we really become before the time we hit kindergarten. Now, we learn some other things and we sometimes become different because of external things, but a lot of who we are gets molded in those first 5 to 6 years of our life. And so because of that, how did that relationship, that dynamic with the idea of, hey, I got to take care of my little sister, who's going to take care of my mom, how did that shape you, and how did that lead to other relationships with friends, family, romantic relationships, work relationships? How did that impact you, or did it impact you in a certain way? And have you been able to look back at that and go, hey, there were some good things that happened with that, there were some bad things that happened with that, where am I now? Kind of walk us through that whole idea, because as I hear that story, I go, man, that had to have some kind of impact on your life.
So I'm a carrier, like I've been a carrier, meaning if there are burdens, I'm a helper. I take on cases that are not mine. I jump in to assist. I'm ready to make sure that other people's lives are going well. I used to be a person that would set myself on fire to make sure everybody else was warm, right? That was kind of my claim to fame. That was just what I did. And then I had a mindset that was wrapped around the fact that I had to perform for love. So there's in my brain, there was like this rubric, like, the more that I do for you, the more you will find me worthy. And the more you find me worthy, then the more you will love me. And if I can do more things, then I can have more worthiness. And then in turn, hopefully I can get this love that I'm constantly searching for. And so that caused me to actually draw people to me that were takers, that would take all the time, like take my time, take my money, take my energy, whatever the case may be. And that's both in romantic situations and friendships, all of those different things. And so I went through, like, I think kind of this ebb and flow where there would be times where I would be freely giving. And then there'd be times I'd pull everything back. I'm not giving to anybody. I don't like people. I don't want to deal. I joke. I say that a lot now. I'd be like, oh, I don't like people. That's not the truth. I don't like people who like to take, like I'm anti-takers. And so I think for me, it set me up in this place of thinking that, because here's the thing. I don't doubt that my mother loved me. I think that she was broken and she did not know how to love me, right? But that also, I think there was a craving for me to have that motherly love, that love, that it should be unconditional, right? But then it's interesting. So how do you get to this place of understanding unconditional love when you live with a person that wants to take all of your lives? How do you balance that even as a kid? And so as I grew up, like even in corporate, one of the things that made me irreplaceable to a certain extent is that I would catch the vision and I would perform. Like if you tell me what it is, I can perform. If you tell me what you need me to do, I can perform. And my tenacity and my agility is unmatched. Like I can take on a ton of projects, multitask, flawlessly, get them back to a person. And I find myself, I was finding myself doing that in my marriages. I would find myself doing that in my friendships, where everyone would come to me to say, I have this issue, or I'm going through this thing, or I can't pay this, or, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on this? But I wouldn't have those people to go to, right? Because I created this dynamic where I was constantly pouring out, but I was not receiving. I wasn't even I didn't know how. Even if people came into my life to give, I'm like, well, this is strange. What's your angle? What are you trying to do? And I would reject that at times. I'm like, nope, this sounds like you. I don't know what that means. And so that, I think that dynamic for me, it created a person who was extremely focused on performing so that she could be loved.
One of the things we say all the time is that people can't heal from what they don't acknowledge. And so there's about 120 something people who are listening to us right now. Those of you that are listening, if what Unika just said is resonating with you, and that you identify as one of those people. As she started to say it, you know that you're one of those people who will set yourself on fire to assist others. You make everybody else's emergency your priority, and you know that you're doing it, at least intellectually, because you're performing for love. And so if that's you, go ahead and put a 1 in the comment section, because we're going to talk about how to get free from that tonight. We're going to have an opportunity where we're going to have some questions and some things to share with you, and you're going to be able to be free from that. So, a lot of times people get embarrassed, but one of the things we talk all the time about Relationships 101 is you can't heal from what you don't acknowledge. And I know that there's some people out there who they don't know why they do it, but they do exactly what you were describing.
Well, and one of the things that I like in listening to your conversation is the ownership.
Yeah.
The ownership. You're able to say, here's the relationship with my mom, here's the relationship with my dad, here is what I did. Because one of the things that we always say is that if it's somebody else's fault, there's nothing I can do to change it.
Yeah.
But if there's a role I play into it, then that is empowering, right? Because I can train myself not to perform for love. I can train myself not to set myself on fire. So I love the ownership and the work that you have done, right? And I think a lot of times what happens, and I don't want people to do this, is that as they're hearing this story, don't get caught up in the emotion of it and go, oh, me too. Follow it all the way out, because it's not your story now. It is what you used to be. And if you neither got free, you can be free. Absolutely. And that's really what I really want people to take from this. Now we're going to keep going, because listen, y'all ought to be sharing this with everybody, right? You ought to be sharing this with everybody, because we want to normalize talking about these things so we can create healthy relationships. Because you're my best friend, what I tried to do was only pull up the things. Because I want you to remember that when you be trying to be shady with Strick with me. I want you to remember who you actually are tied to, okay? But because you are, I really worked through the questions to share the things I knew you had said publicly, right? So you've already talked about this trauma with your mom and with your dad, but now I want you to talk specifically about 2 incidents that happened, I believe, when you were 6 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So when I was 6, and that's why this becomes kind of that, what's the right word? You know how you have before Christ and after Christ? This is like one of those moments, like it's a defining moment in my life that I can go back to and understand so many different things from this. So when I was 6 years old, my mother was very much, she operated a lot in fear, right? So she had more of a fear-based parenting. Like and I have to catch myself, because sometimes I have that same narrative. Like she'd say something. I'll just give you a quick example. I think it's funny. So she would say, make sure you have on beautiful, clean underwear. Now, that's a hygiene thing. But my mom would say, in case you get hit by a car and the paramedics have to cut your clothes off, your underwear are clean, right? And I'm like,
my grandma
what
said,
in the world?
My grandma said it too.
I bet you 50% of the people on here done had their parents say that to them.
No. Yeah.
So that kind of, she had that piece, like even in all that mess, she had this protection over us. And so she really didn't allow us to spend a night at people's house. She really struggled with us spending a night at people's house. But there was a couple that went to our church, and the husband was a person, I realize now he either was probably a deacon or elder or something like that. But he would collect the tithe and offering. And we went to this little bitty small church. So they had like this little wood thing that you change the numbers on, so I remember him doing it. He would do, move the numbers around. I don't understand. They never got more numbers. They just moved the numbers around on the thing, but I digress. So anyway, my mom really trusted them. And so they were having a birthday party, and it was a slumber party, and I wanted to go to the slumber party so bad, like, because I'd read in my books, I would read. I was a big reader even as a small kid, and so I would read these books, chapter books even, and I'm like, I want to do a slumber party. I want to do that. I want to be a part of this thing. And so I begged my mother, I begged her to let me go. And she was like, okay, yeah, I'll let you go, and so she knew the couple, she knew the family, she knew the kids. They went to our church. And so everything is copacetic. So I go to this birthday party, and the father, he asked me if I wanted to help ice the cake for his child. And I'm like, absolutely, sign me up. Like, I'm all about this. Because here we are, let's perform. if I perform, then I'm going to be worthy because I'm used to this. So yeah, you giving me opportunity to perform, I'm about to nail this cake. Okay. Come up and he's showing me, you know, because he did a homemade cake, which I thought was pretty snazzy because we didn't do homemade anything at our house. And so, you know, I'm icing the cake, and he's like showing me different ways to do it. And I can even visualize this chocolate icing. And as you know, I'm spreading it onto the cake. And he's like, you know, you did a really good job. This is amazing. I'm proud of you. And the other kids are like, this is great. And then we eat the cake and they like the cake. And I feel like even though I didn't break one egg or sift any flour, that I was a part of making this cake, right? And so I'm like high, emotionally high, because my self-worth box is checked and my love box is checked amongst my peers, and also from these adults that it's interesting. I'm actually having a revelation right now. I perceive them as being important because he used to get up in front of church. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, they were like the right type of people you wanted to find you important. You know, they had a nice house. They had a swing set in their backyard. They had 2 cars for each person. Each person had a car. And so, you know, for me, they were like this amazing couple. Well, that night when I was sleeping, that same man, he came and he unzipped my sleeping bag and he took my innocence. And it was interesting during that time. I kept going back and humming, you know, a song. I was humming this Jesus Loves Me because I couldn't think of what to do because I didn't know. And even in that moment, I didn't talk about this from the stage. I never told him to stop because in my mind, I was like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this the appropriate thing? It doesn't seem appropriate, but he let me do these things and he esteemed me highly. Is this a reward or a consequence? I didn't understand. Like, is this like, I don't, because he said these things and he articulated these things about me, but now we're here. But I don't think this ain't how it's supposed to be. I'm not sure, but I don't think this is how it's supposed to be. And back then we didn't have as much education. Like kids now are like, this is my safe space. Don't touch this. Give me my, you know, we didn't have, I didn't have it. I don't know if you had it in your school, but no one talked to us about that. And so, you know, that morning I got up and, you know, I did not make aside from the humming and me holding my sleeping bag, I did not think to address with anyone what happened. And I grabbed my things, I rolled up my sleeping bag. He was making pancakes for everybody else. And I said, no, thank you. And I went and sat on the porch. I waited for my mother. And even in that instance, in that situation, I wanted to protect her because I knew it was interesting because I thought about this. Actually, I didn't think about it. I was reading in a journal where I had written some details about this. And I remember my mom used to talk to her girlfriends about that couple, and she esteemed that man highly as a husband, like as the type of husband she would want. So not only was he esteemed highly in the church, he was esteemed highly in my house. Like, how do I crash her dreams of what, you know, husband material is, not even knowing? It's so crazy how this is why I think I would say to people, don't underestimate what your kids know or think. Because I was 6 having these complex thoughts and analyzing and saying, I can't bring her world down. Right. And so I didn't share it with her. You know, not only did I not share it, I have this gift / curse to be able to compartmentalize things and lock a key and get rid of it. And it's gone. That thing is not, it doesn't exist. Like just how the Lord says our sins are like north to south gone. I don't know where it went. And so I went through this period of, okay, I'm just not going to talk about it. I don't know how I feel about what's happened to me. But I also know that I feel a dirt. I feel like I could smell him. I could feel his the stubbiness of his chest hairs. Like there was just a ick that was on me. And so my mother was at work one evening, and I ran my bath water, and I would take really hot baths. You know, we didn't have a shower. You know, we were poor. We didn't have no shower. We just had a bath. So I ran my bath water, and I ran it really hot. And so because we lived in subsidized housing, they controlled the temperatures. You know, they controlled how hot your water was or whatever the case may be. And I didn't understand that. You know, I found that out through court. And so I ran my bath water and I was going in between, going back into my bedroom, watching Charlie's Angels, and my mother was at work. And I put my sister down. I cooked our dinner and I put her down. And again, I'm 6. And so I come back into the bathroom and I'm trying to, I could feel the heat coming from the tub. And I realized that I probably had it on the too hot side. So I was like, let me put it on cold. And so the way the spigot was, is like one little thing that comes up and you have to push it over here for cold or over here for hot. And so I was pushing it. It was kind of stuck and I gave it one good shove and then I fell in the water. And so I fell in the water and I ended up getting myself back out of the water, which is a miracle within itself because I didn't burn my hands. Like there were no burn marks and there still isn't, obviously there were no burn marks that were on my hands or even all up through my arms, but they were on, over 90% of my body had 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree burns. My mom came in from work and I was on the bathroom floor. And I was trying, the only reason I was on the bathroom floor is because I really was trying to like muscle through and get up because I was like, this is not going to go well that I'm on this floor and I haven't taken my bath. And when she comes in, she's going to be frustrated because I haven't done my task. Right. And so, when she came in,
about performing.
Still performing. I got to make sure I check the box, get everything together for her. And so when she came in and she came in, she's like, what's going, what are you doing? And I am at this point, don't even know this, but I'm like close to going into shock. Like I had like 6 blood transfusions, like all types of things happened where they were like, people were just like stacked, like how you see on Grey's Anatomy. I was one of those people like where I could see the lights and everyone going crazy. So when my mom, when I was trying to explain to her what was happening, but I wasn't able to articulate it, she put it together and her first instinct was to grab my clothes. And when she took my clothes off, my skin came with it and she lost it. At this point, she is like going bananas. And it's interesting because I remember her pacing in the hallway and she had bought a blanket and she took the blanket back. She didn't know what to do. And she made a phone call to someone and explained to them what happened. But the other thing that my mother had a fear of was losing her kids. So she's like, I don't think I can treat this at home. This is not ginger ale is not going to fix this situation. Right. It's not one of those things we can rub some cocoa butter on it and it's going to be okay. And so she knew she had to call the ambulance, but then she also was, I think, battling this. I wasn't home. There's a lot of dynamics going on. And so she ended up calling the ambulance. And while we were waiting for them to come, she started to explain the narrative for me. I was at home. I was downstairs. You fell in the tub. This is what you have to say. If you don't say this, they are going to take you from me. You will leave you. And it doesn't mean you go to your dad's. It's going to mean you go to some stranger's house and they may or may not be nice. I'm not signing up for that. What's the script?
Right.
Where's the period?
Right.
Give me the script. I'll step on stage. And so, Children's Services did come to the hospital and they did interview me around my injuries. And so I'm in the hospital. The first time I was in for 40 days, I had 6 different operations. Sorry. I had 6 different operations. I had to learn to walk again. They told that, we had interesting wheelchairs because your legs were able to be straight. They were wooden, and your legs were, it wasn't like normal because I couldn't bend because of the tightness of the skin. Mm-hmm. And so from skin grafts to having my bandages changed each day, learning to walk again. They told me that I probably wouldn't be able to have kids because I had to have a surgery that was done around my abdomen that, they were like, we don't know that she'll be able to have children based on how we have to place certain things. That was a lie because then I had 5 of them. I need to go back and talk to that doctor, but it's like, you tricked me. No, I'm just kidding. But that, for me, what was interesting, even laying in that bed, like I had this little Bible that I kept with me. It's just really little. It's about this size. Had a little lamb on it. And the wording is, I don't even know why they hand that to us because the wording's so small, you can't even really read the Bible. But I kept my little Bible with me. And I really just trusted in God during that time period because my mom would have to go to work. My dad would come up. He would brush my hair. And, I think 1 or 2 of my siblings would come. One of my siblings she never wanted to acknowledge, that something bad had happened to me. And so there, it just was a really traumatic, trying time where I think in that hospital, that was one of the times where I decided that there was no one else on the earth big enough to protect me. because now both of you have failed me twice. Dad, you failed me because I'm stuck at mom's house, and mom let me go over to these people's house, and they did this thing, and then I fell in this water, and now look at me laying up here in this bed, and I'm the one that has to press the button for the nurse to come. I'm the one that's picking out the menu. I'm the one that has the catheter. I'm the one that has the IV. And for me, it appeared like everybody else was just kind of, they would come in to be a part of that story for a while, and then they would have to leave because they had to still pay bills. So they had to go and do other things. And so even in that, I decided that there was no one else on this earth that was big enough besides God to be able to handle me, to protect me, to love me, to be present for me. And so it was okay for me to continue to be present for others, but there's either I'm not worthy enough for people to be present for me, or people just aren't big enough to be present for me.
Yeah, so it almost sounds like the feelings you had about that, these other actions almost just solidified your feelings about that. And it was like, okay, only God can take care of me, but I still got to keep showing up for everybody else so I keep performing, so that people keep loving me. But even though I'm doing this for them, I know they ultimately can't or won't protect me.
Right. And I wouldn't even put you in a position, like, why would I give you the opportunity to fail?
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I'm going to give it to you. Like, I'm not even that. So I'm sure there's people that came into my life early on that never experienced, I think, the unique I am today, not even close to it, because my guard, that armor, so thick, like I could be sitting there and you think I'm close. I know her. You don't know me. I'm not giving you a chance to do anything for me. I can do it for myself, or I'd rather pay people to do it. Because then I feel like if I pay you to do it, then we're under some sort of contract or agreement, but it's not like where I think I would allow people to show up for me.
Yeah, because if you're paying people, at least it's transactional. There's no
emotion. And I love transactions.
Involved.
Right. Because I can fire you. Yeah. Which is not the same. If you're cool, then it's like, oh, okay, now we gotta have a difficult conversation. That sounds like work. So
this is a powerful exchange, right? But I want to remind everybody, this is all before you're 7.
Right.
This is like 6-year-old Unica, right? But something that I think is so powerful in this is that you're going through trauma, crazy trauma, that like anything you would have done after that, people could have been like, it's because of your trauma. But somehow you turn to God in your trauma, right? And it's like, which always reminds me that it's not what happens to us. Because 2 people can have the exact same thing happen to them, and one person say, I can't stand God because I got touched. And you're like, hold on, let me be clear. God is the only person that's big enough to take care of me, because clearly these people can't handle it, right?
Right.
And so I think that is so powerful, man. Your story is just so good. Like, do you have something you want to ask them?
No, I mean, again, I just want to make sure we're connecting. All of these things happen. And even though you are the person you show up in today, because we're ever progressing, from the time you were 6 until now, there's been all kinds of relationships in there. There's been romantic relationships. There's been friendships. There have been work relationships. There's been family relationships. And so I'm really interested to hear, as you navigated through from age 6 to what you are now, what are some things that people can learn to say, yeah, here are some things that were traumatic for me, and as a result, I behave this way, and now I've learned differently, and now I behave this way.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Because I think that's what a lot of people show up and they go, oh, this resonates with me. I too had this tragedy, but they are at this level. And you're like, I had that tragedy, but I've moved on, and now I'm here living at this level because I've changed my mindset.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. I think one, both my mother and my father were pretty no nonsense. My dad was an Army sergeant, and so that with that comes that. And so I in addition to the things we're talking about, while they both loved me, there was a love withdrawn. It wasn't a present. Neither of them were soft. If you fell down and you scraped your knee, they're like, get up, you bleeding. You know, how bad is it? Go in there and get a Band-Aid. The reason why I share that is because even in all the things, and even my dad, who I think fought to be my protector, right? They really didn't take excuses. You weren't allowed to have a bunch of excuses. Like I wasn't allowed to bring a B into my house, and so my mother would say, and I would try and explain, well, this is what I mean. She didn't care. You don't get B's. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And so, that I think part of that no excuse piece that made me think that these things that happen, I don't get a pass. Right. And just because they happened, I don't get to just say, let me go blame this. That's part one. Part two, when I look back at my childhood, there were so many other things that happened to and I'm not minimizing what happened to me or the trauma. Right. But I remember thinking, I knew a girl that went to my school and her mother was a prostitute in our neighborhood. That's my mom's not that, and I knew people who had their mothers, were strung out on things, and my mom wasn't that. And I knew people who didn't know who their daddy was. It was not my story either. So I even had this rubric kind of going that it is horrible, but it ain't the worst, right? It's not. And if this person can get up every day and put their shoes on and come to school, surely I can get up and come to school and do what I need to do. As I started to get older, though, I thought, I used to think I wanted to prove things wrong, right? And so I'm big on research. I'm big on reading things I like to read, and hearing about the different ways that trauma, impact people and understand that. And I'm like a little bit competitive too. And so I'm like, that ain't gonna be me. Oh, you mean they don't have that? Nope, not me. I'm not doing that. That's not going to be my story. I'm not going to be that way. And there were some pieces little by little that I would let go, right? The hardest one for me to release was allowing people to help me, because I just inherently had trust issues. Like I don't want you close to me. I want you to back away. I can kiki with you. I can brunch with you, but that's about all we get, and people would say, oh, Unica and I are so tight. We're so cool. And I'd be like, hey, we not, how do I keep this up? But I think that it literally was tiring. It was exhausting.
I do understand.
I know you do. And so, but I think there's a couple things there. A lot of times we hear a narrative around choose you, but I think it's about choosing God. And I remember there were revelations that came to me that even my relationship with God was performative, right? I remember I was in the church and my pastor was like, you can't pick up another thing. You're ushering, you're cleaning the church, you're singing in the choir, you're doing the children's ministry, and I'm like, but I got to do these things. I have to do these things because I need, I want him to know that I love him, that, and so in order for me to show him I love him, I need to do all of these things. And my pastor was like, but he loves you. And I remember him saying that. And I was like, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. It's not about only me and how I'm professing and showing my love for him. He has a love for me that is deep. And I think the more I allowed God to love me, and this isn't like, because I said something to somebody in our Bible study. And they're like, well, I don't want to hear that. I want something more practical. I'm like, this is about practical as it can get. The more I allowed him to love me, the more I was able to love. My inability, and I still struggle with, I have to make a choice to get help. I have to make a choice. I keep a little notebook where I write the things that I need in, and I say, okay, who can I trust this with? Who can I ease into trusting this with? I had all pairs. A lot of people know I had all pairs. That was a huge step for me, because that for me was admitting that there was an area where there was a gap where I needed help. And even though it's a paid position and you bring the person into your house, I still was admitting that I needed that help. And so I think that, really leaning into the way that God loves you and understanding that no matter what happened, no matter what occurred, that doesn't have to be the end of your story. So often that's where Rewrite was birthed. It's just that there's this narrative that started, that the end capsized my purpose early on. But God and I got that pen back and we decided to change that. And so what did I want tomorrow to look like? What did I want it to look like in my relationships?
Pause, because I want to come back to that. What do I want tomorrow look like? Here's what I heard you say. I heard you say that, first of all, you made a decision.
Right.
What happened to you would not define you for the rest of your life. So I need people to put in the comments, whatever has happened to you, if that's bad, that didn't work out, nothing changes until you make a decision, right? And I think the powerful thing about making a decision is that if you make a decision, you give God something to work with. You didn't necessarily know all the tools to be free, but you made a decision that you wouldn't stay bound. And so because you made a decision, you gave God permission, right? And then I love the thing that you just said, that because I think this is so powerful right here. So many people cannot decide their tomorrow, what their tomorrow should look like, because they won't let go of yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's even interesting because in the comments, like whenever you talk about a pain point, I see that people go, oh, I resonate with that. But what we also want is I resonate with making the decision that I won't stay here. I resonate. I love when you said, God and I took the pen back. Somebody needs to take that today and say, God and I are taking the pen back. Yes, crappy stuff happened to me. Yes, my parents. Yes, I got a divorce. Yes, all of these things. But tonight, God and I are taking the pen back. We're taking the pen back, and we get to decide, not the man who touched me, not the man who left me. We get to decide what tomorrow looks like.
Yeah. And she said that's where rewrite was birthed.
That's where rewrite was birthed from.
Now somebody said she had a what? She had a nanny, y'all. She used a fancy word, but she had a nanny.
An au pair.
Somebody said she had a what? She had a nanny, y'all. An au pair.
You know, that's what they go do when it's real serious. He gonna make it. No, it was he's like, whoa, he like.
It was in the comments. Somebody wants to know. They said she had a what?
No, but it's like, so you know, we're just not going to get through all of your story. We're going to have you back in 2024 so you can tell some more about this, because we didn't even get to your marriages. We didn't get to.
But I do want to ask that one question though. How do you think all of this played a role in your marriages? Because how many times you've been married?
Twice.
So, and I knew that. I was just asking for them. But how did that play a role in your marriages? Like, were you? Do you think, looking back, you go, okay, I'm such a different person today than when I was married? Or do you think, no, it was just them? It was. I just picked wrong.
It's never just them. Yeah, I mean, unless you have this like a real bad joker, it's never just them, because you also picked them.
Right.
Whether they asked or not, you said yes. So part of it is on you. You know, from that point. I think that I think there's a couple of things, so I'll try and make it succinct. Am I the same person I was when I was married? No. And do I believe that my husband's got the best wife they could possibly get? No, because they still got a wife that wanted to perform. And as a result of the performance, I expected certain things that were a part of the covenant, but I expected it based on my performance. And a lot of those performances were transactional. And so I don't know that I ever brought my full heart to any person I was married to. I don't think I gave all of Unica to that. And I surely didn't trust them to take care of me. What? And because I was in that space of me taking care of people, I attracted people that wanted to be taken care of. Right. And then I would enjoy that in the beginning, but then I'm like, nah, I need to be, I don't have a safe place to land. I don't have a soft place to land. This world is beating up on me, and I'm coming home and you got needs. And I'm not talking about regular man needs. I'm talking about like basic needs, like you trying to figure out stuff. And so I think that for me, that performance piece, that armor came in. That armor was present in the bedroom. That armor was present in the living room. That armor was present everywhere. And I remember my second husband saying to me, you know, I know you're here, but you're not here. There's not love here. And I was like, yeah, you know, you're right. We should probably end this. So that was hire slow, fire fast. So that was probably
they do teach us that.
But I think, you know, when I look back on it, the demise of my marriages was just as much my fault as it was theirs, you know, because they got someone who was broken, and out of my brokenness, I attracted people. It's not, I'm trying to use my verbiage because I don't want to disparage them, but I attracted people that were not written in my book for my future.
Yeah. And that's the reason I asked that question, because I know from talking with people that sometimes people don't realize the brokenness in them is what even caused them to be attracted to the person who they used to love so much, who now they actually despise, because it's kind of like, it's like you described, you know, I'm performative. So I need someone who needs me to perform. But the more I perform and I don't get the reciprocation of what I am expecting from my performance, now I'm getting irritated. And and so and there's
You
so
know, y'all walked me through some of them irritations. He trying. I don't care.
and there's so many people, not just women, but men who
Yeah.
actually do the same thing. They don't realize it, but that's what they're doing, because, you know, you take a young boy who didn't have his father, and he oftentimes is trying to perform for his daddy. And sometimes it shows up by being this overly masculine man on the football field or the basketball court, or doing really good in school. And so then what happens is he takes that same attitude into his relationship. And what that man is trying to do is to perform, try to show up, you know, and I'm working hard, I'm providing, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And all the woman wanted you to do was to sit down for 15 minutes so she could tell you about her day. But you don't have
Right.
time for that, because that's not the transactional relationship. You like, I take care of you, I need you to do all these things. And so people don't get out of their own way. And that's the reason that we will never be unemployed.
That is the reason. We
That is
will
the reason we
never
will always
be,
have a job,
right?
because people don't know how to work through that. I'd love to have you back some point to really just hammer in on that, because that is what so many people need to know. And I know people say you need to write a book about it, but it's just the nuance sometimes is what people actually need to hear, so they can be like, oh, I didn't even realize that I too, the marriage I'm in right now, the relationship I'm in right now with my friends, with my family, I'm doing that right now.
Right.
Well, it
Right.
reminds me of something Bishop Corletta Vaughn said to me one time. She said, sometimes the warfare is because you're flying too low. So she's like, she said, sometimes you're mad at people who injured you, who never would have gotten the chance to injure you had you known who you were, because you never would have been attracted to them. You never would have been in the same circle. You never would have had kind of that, like, and she was like, one of the most freeing things that you can do is that you can elevate yourself to who God called you to be, and stop being mad at people that you picked in your brokenness, that you picked in your performance. There's somebody right now, you're mad at a friend. You're mad at, I will never ever forget this. When I first got married to Edwin, I found out that I had been betrayed by one of my really good friends. And he said this thing to me, like, he's like 22, maybe he's 23. He looks to me. He said, you know what your problem is? And I said, what? He said, you thought you were special. He said, now you had watched her do it to everybody else, but somehow you thought you were so special that she wouldn't do it to you. He said, how can you be mad when somebody does to you what you have watched them do to other people? I knew then I would pick the winner, right?
Right,
so,
right.
Is that there are some people who you could get free today. And on what is the day? The October 9th, 10th, on October 10th, you could get free, and you could stop telling that story, and you could make a decision to say that the only reason that they ever got access to me is because of what was in me. And I don't even have to be afraid of attracting that kind of friend like that again, because I have so elevated. So I don't have to be afraid of loving again, because I have so elevated that the person I picked then, I wouldn't even recognize them. I wouldn't even notice them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of the things that's so beautiful, at least for me in this stage in my life. I'm in love with Jesus, but I'm also in love with Unica. You know, I treat myself well. And so there will be a level of competition for someone to come into the space, whereas before I didn't treat myself well, right? I treated everybody else well. And I think that it's so true, because even the attraction piece, there's some people that they don't even catch your attention. You know what I mean? Like there's just globally that person is not, those people are just not, and it's not like an arrogance, right? There's not an arrogance there, but there's just, somebody said one time, they said, man, you're a lot. Go find less.
Yeah.
Go find less.
I'm not fixing to become less for you.
It's the go find less for me. If you think I'm a lot, Go find
Go find
less.
less. Go find
Right.
less. And I think that that piece of it for me, there is, I used to say settling is not an option, and I just have a refusal to settle, and that's in all of the areas, you know what I mean? And there may be some times where I slip on certain stuff, I break some covenants with myself, but I get back up and get back on those things because I'm worth it. And I'm not tied to how I'm performing in my friendships, and I'm not tied to how I'm performing with my kids or how I'm performing in my church for my own self-worth. You know, I've found that in my identity in Christ, and I lean on that. And I found that that made, we can talk about this next time, but that disrupted some things with people because people needed me. There were people around me who liked my giving, who liked my sacrifice, who liked, you know, not being present for me and me being present for them. And I'm like, yeah, no more. This is not how it works now.
Some people don't like when you change in such a way that change no longer benefits them. They like,
Right.
wait a minute, I need you to be the person who performs. I need you to be the person who needs to be needed. Now we had a
Right.
person, somebody asked a question, and listen, these folks are still adding people. I don't know if you can see these numbers going up,
Oh,
but
I can't see anything.
they still going up. So they add more people. And one person had a question I thought maybe we could just kind of tackle before we go.
Absolutely.
And so the question was, it said, okay, but after she made the decision to move forward, what steps did she take to get past it all? And a lot of these people follow us, so they ain't gonna let you get off of here without some steps, some 3 keys,
So you
5
give us some
steps,
rewrite.
7 steps.
Give us
So
some
give
rewrite.
them some rewrite.
How do you
You
rewrite?
ain't gotta get in the whole thing, but you might get some new clients here.
So here's the thing. Let me think about how I want to put those steps out there. So the one part that's kind of interesting is how does she get past it all? I think is incremental, right? And I think that the first thing you have to do is you have to take a good hard look at yourself. And I remember some years ago, I sat down and I had, so every year in October is my new year. I don't celebrate in January. That's not a new year. My new year starts when my year is about to change. And I remember sitting down and I said, what are the current character defects that I have? Because no one knows you like you if you're honest with you. But so many of you don't want to get quiet. You don't want to sit down. You don't want to submit. So you don't know yourself. You're running around here thinking that you're okay. And there's some things there's some deficiencies that are within you. So I sat down and I said, okay, what are some things that I do? And I started to write those down. Then I went and I mapped it to, well, when was the first incident or the first time that I can remember doing that thing? And then I went to the why. And if I got to a why where I didn't understand why I did it, I sought God about it. I said, okay, God, why is it that I don't like to be hugged? Why don't I want people to hug spontaneous hugs? Now, if I really like you and you cool with me, I might hug you spontaneously. People get this so confused. They see me hugging at one person and they think it's okay for them to hug me. And so, I'm like, and I'll do it, but you can tell it's not like I'm like, ooh. But I'm like, okay, I reject intimacy. I reject affection. Why do I do that? Right. And so going and mapping that all the way back and saying, okay, there's still some unhealed portions that have to do with how I was raised or whatever that traumatic experience is. And then I write that down and I work on that thing. So I don't fix this. How do you get past it all? You can't just get past it all. You have to pick
That's
the pieces and start to do that incremental work. I think it's the same as when I'm working with companies and they're like, we have 15 key initiatives for 2024. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
You should have 3 to 5.
Yeah,
if you
3.
go beyond 5, then you're going to
Yep.
struggle.
Yep.
And so I think that, really taking this pragmatic approach of going back and saying, why do I show up this way? If I feel away, I used to not place outbound calls to people if they ever got off the phone with me in a hurry because I felt like I was disturbing them. Right. And so then I was like, why do I do that? Well, I do that because there's a fear of rejection. Okay, well, when was the first time I felt rejected? Okay, it was when my dad brought those kids home. Okay, well, then you're still not through that. Let's work through that. Then I started going out asking for wild and crazy things and calling people all the time, even if they didn't, they would bang me the voicemail. I'm like, bet, call you right back. Hey, how you doing? You got your do not disturb on? Notify anyway. And so because I'm testing into this thing where I'm deficient. If I'm unable to lift something, I have to do weight training, right? have to do
Yep.
strengthening. So once I identify the deficiency, then you have to actually make a plan and execute a plan around how you're going to build that up. And so that I think that for those that are looking for a list, look at some of the ways that you show up. Talk to some of your friends and your family and say, is there a way that I show up that is not adding value to our relationship, or a way that you show up for yourself that's not adding value? When was the first time that you saw that you did that? What prompted that to happen? And what are the actual steps that you could take to get past that? I posted, I think yesterday or sometime on Facebook, I have 2 therapists and a coach. I have one therapist to help me deal with white rage. I have another therapist to help me deal with everything else. And so I got that in 2020, Sean. You remember I had to get that in 2020 because I was like, Nikki, you got to work on yourself because you're going down a pathway that you shouldn't be going down. And so I'm not sure why I see you. Good night. Okay, I'll be up there in a minute.
You like
20 minutes.
Too long.
Like, I'm like, you should be asleep. You can wake it up at 5 a.m. But I think that, bye, Trey. I think part of that is you stepping back. You have to be able to see yourself. Like, even in the Bible, Jesus couldn't heal the withered hand until he stretched it out. So we're keeping it in our shirt and we're walking around here acting like everything's okay because we don't want people to see that brokenness, and we don't even want to show. We get so used to it being hidden that we take it even in our own intimate places and keep it hidden. I like to bring mine out. Yeah, in this month, I'm going to be looking at all the things I said I would do that I didn't do. Well, why didn't you do it? You made a commitment to yourself to do that. Why didn't you accomplish that? Okay, let's go back and let's map it through and figure out what's keeping me from doing that. And I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of my story. There's no part of my story that I hold back. And the reason why I don't hold that back is not only for the victory to happen for other people, but it helps me combat shame. Right. So if I don't tell the story, then I can be eaten away with the shame. And so you don't move forward because you're paralyzed by shame. So first, identify where the deficiencies are. From those deficiencies, understand, go try and map it back to the first time that you did that. Then get to the why and ask yourself why 5 times. Why do you not feel comfortable making an outbound call to people who you love? Right. Why do you, and I keep going through that process. And it's like, okay, fine. It's because I have a fear of rejection. When they don't answer my call, I feel like they're rejecting me. And if I feel like they're rejecting me, then I feel like I'm not worthy. And if I'm not worthy, then that means that they don't love me. How did you get that story? Is that story true? Is that story working for you? Is it something that is that how has that mindset helped you in the past? How has it elevated you? Or do you find yourself still sitting in the same sad, sunken place that you were in last year because you keep staying focused on the same processes and outcomes? And you can't get it through Facebook likes and commenting and joining these different things. You have to go get off of here and go do the work.
Nor can you get it from just wanting to always go to church and get a high from going to church. One of the things that really frustrates me about people who say they love the Lord is that when you start to talk about doing the kind of things you just mentioned, people see that as work and they go, "Ooh, I don't want to do all that. I'm gonna go to church and hear me a good song and I'm gonna shout about it." But that does nothing for you when you leave that environment. And I'm like, right. So it's one thing. It's like people are trying to inoculate themselves by just shouting or just being in an environment where somebody can prophesy. It's going to all get better. 2024 going to be your year. Not if you don't change. If you don't go back and do those 5 whys, if you don't go by and think about taking those incremental steps about why do you show up the way you show up? Okay, when I do this, why? And spend the time to actually do the hard work it takes, then you just end up being the same person year after year after year.
Which is so frustrating. But I was going to say what you're talking about, that's exactly how we attacked our marriage.
Absolutely.
We didn't try to deal with 15 things at a time.
There was no way I could fix everything that I thought was wrong with me.
Right.
Me.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
There was no way.
I know where we were going, but I was about to sign off.
You have to work on me incrementally.
But every year at our anniversary, we would say, "What's the one thing we need to work on?" And this is what I always encourage people to work on.
And we still do it. We still sit down at our anniversary.
We still do.
Yeah.
You're just so much better now that there's just not that much stuff to work on.
If you work on it incrementally, after 29 years, it shouldn't be that much.
But I want you to think about this, is that we say pick the thing that's most likely to destroy you. So if you're lonely and you're not having good relationships, you got to deal with the why. And I was thinking about this. This was a funny thing early in our relationship. Like, we both will be working and doing stuff. And if you said you were going to call me back and you didn't call me back, when I was ready to talk again, I just called you again. And then finally you were like, well, I don't want to bother you. And I was like, quit being ridiculous. You're my friend. Just call me. Like, literally, I do strict like that. Like, he'll be like, I'm gonna call you back. But if he don't call me back in enough time, I'm gonna call him back. Right. And then you started doing it to help you overcome this idea that me not answering the phone or me having to get off on a call didn't have anything to do with my love for you. And then you work through it. And now you just be like, girl, you said just go call me back. Now I'm back, right? That is a practical way that people
you have to do it.
They have to do that.
Yeah.
But I love the thing that you said, that like you have to be self-aware and not create these stories. And if she's on here, don't say nothing. Nobody will know I'm talking about you. There is this girl that goes to our church, and she used to frustrate me because she would always apologize to me about stuff and I didn't know what she was apologizing about. She would send me these long letters telling me how sorry she was for what she did, but I never knew what she was talking about. And finally, I had to say to her, that actually makes me not want to be around you. Because literally, I think we had a good interaction. And 2 days later, I get a message from you telling me all the things that you did wrong that I don't even know about, right? And some of it is people need to get out of their heads and stop thinking that people are rejecting them. Stop taking something personal that may not have anything to do with you at all.
But the reason they do it is because they haven't done this process. Why do I feel like every time I have an interaction with the person who I care about, I find myself having to apologize in case I did something wrong? That stems from something. That comes from somewhere. That's not something that just came out the sky. That was something that they actually encountered at some point that was real. And now what they have done is they've taken that and extrapolated it to every other relationship they have. It's not just you. They do that with anybody probably who they are in a relationship where they esteem that person in such a way that they don't want to disappoint them. So everything they think they do becomes a disappointment.
And I think, when we think about the fear of rejection is such a stronghold on people. And when you have that fear of rejection, sometimes keeps people, like, even when they're in the church, they're like, I don't want to sin because it's not because I love God, but it's because I have a fear of him rejecting me, or I don't want to do this because I have a fear of being rejected. And one of the things that's tangible that I think may help people is I seek out rejection now. So I'll walk into a hotel and I'm checking in. And I was like, I'd like to be upgraded to the presidential suite at no additional charge. Sometimes they give me my stuff, right? Sometimes they're like, oh, absolutely, Miss Jade. I'm like, well, holla at me, but there's most of the times they're going to say no. And that's conditioning my mind to understand that no doesn't necessarily mean rejection. Like, it's not at the heart level of rejection, right? And so that, like, I'm constantly testing in or asking for these ridiculous things, and it's like, and I shouldn't say ridiculous because there's somebody, like I said, I remember I walked into the Gaylord and I said to the guy, I said, I'd like to be upgraded to the presidential suite. And he said, no problem. And I looked at Trey, and Trey looked at me. He said, what's the presidential suite? I said, we about to find out because I ain't been in it before. We gonna see today. We gonna see.
Listen,
we gonna see.
I'm fixing to book a trip just so I can try this.
No.
Listen,
I want to say this, but like, what she's not saying is that you've been dating somebody for 6 years and you now go ask them to marry you. Like, that's not the kind. You got to be clear with the saints. You got to be clear because they'll be like, that's my confirmation. I'm finna ask James to marry me.
You've been dating him for 6 years and y'all ain't had a conversation about marriage. That's a whole nother conversation. But okay.
No. So I think that's really important. So what I would like to qualify is take a risk for rejection in places that don't break you.
No, take that risk so we can see what James built up. No, I'm just like,
it's been 6 years. James need to be
risk. James, what's up? You gonna put a ring on it or not? And then if James rejects you, then to the left, like it's just that.
This ain't even a risk. James need to put up or shut up.
James already told you. James already silently rejected you anyway, baby.
Listen, if your
sorry.
name is James and you're on the broadcast, we ain't talking about you specifically.
Etoy said, "Don't be talking about her husband, her and James. She been married to James for a long time. Sharetta too. Listen,
We
okay.
ain't talking about y'all, James.
So here's what we want to do. We usually go about somewhere between 90 minutes, a little bit longer. If anybody has any questions, we're gonna bring Unica back.
Yeah,
definitely, because there is so many questions. Yeah, I want y'all to acknowledge for the people that I gave good questions today, though.
You did.
I did.
You gave amazing questions, and she gave them to us in advance.
You did good.
No, but let me tell you what this is. Let me tell you why I did it. You taught about level 5 commitment, and it was my responsibility to ask Unica, to confirm with Unica, and to do the questions. And I was like, I know that both of them think I'm gonna show up and just shoot from the hip. You watch, I'm about to have some questions.
You did good.
Because listen here, I am committed to level 5 commitment.
Y'all did good. But I'm gonna take some of what we're talking about tonight, and y'all should join us on December 19th. We're gonna finish some of this conversation. If we don't have it before that, but this is good. But some of you we always like to leave a little time. And listen, y'all are in here strong. Y'all still adding people. But if you have a question specifically for Unica and we can get to it, we'll try to. So go ahead and flood your comments your questions in the comment section. We'll try to do that.
Unica, people want to know, how can they get in touch with you? What's your website? Unica, I know you have a rewrite class that people can go through. What is your website?
Yeah, do you have a class that they can take without you having to be on with them? Like sometimes people have the class already in Kajabi. We know you busy, you got lots of things to do. You can't be fielding individual phone calls from people, but is there a class they can take? It's already out there. She's just gonna keep drinking her water.
Yeah, listen, for all these people that work with Sean, y'all know Sean was my coach first. So y'all see that look she giving me? That's one of them soul shift looks that she giving me. That's what look, and she ain't gonna let up. Let me think. Do I have a class? I do. And I've been debating on if I'm gonna run it in the fourth quarter. So I think I can commit to doing a class. That's fine. So here's the thing. If you want to connect with me, my website's probably not the best way because it's geared more towards my corporate clients. But you can connect with me on Instagram. DM me on Instagram and DM me and tell me that you are interested in a life rewrite. And that will kick off some things for us to be able to stay in contact with you.
What is your Instagram? Is it just Unica J?
Unica J. I'm Unica J everywhere.
Okay. Unica J
With the exception of my real Facebook where there's something else in there because I'm trying to guard people from coming over there.
Can you come back next month? Can we just finish this next month? We don't have to wait to 2024.
That would be November the 14th, I believe.
Oh, it's in the evening though. So yeah, that works. Evenings always work.
7 p.m.
All right, so we're gonna have a part 2 with Unica J. Next month we'll put you on the flyer. Today you were a surprise guest, but next month we'll put you on the flyer, right?
Listen, y'all better go ahead and I'm telling you, you better mark your calendars for November 14th. We're gonna come back and there's so much more to this. I thought we would get further, but listen, we just scratched the surface. So you're not gonna want to miss this next month.
So we're going to leave you with a couple of action steps. I didn't see any questions in here. So one, I would ask you.
A lot of people are telling you this great job.
Everybody's saying great job.
In fact, if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you may see a thing that says comments. You don't see it?
Oh, wait.
If you click comments, when you said you couldn't see anything, I was like, what do you mean?
I was like, it is a blank thing over here. So I was like, okay, I don't know what this is.
So I'm like, yeah. So next time you just.
Oh wait, Sheila asked for my Cash App. I'm Unica J everywhere.
She's Unica J. Unica J.
Unica J.
So if you want to give a question, we'll go with this. But here's what I want to say to you guys: you got to make a decision. So we could make that a step number 1. Make a decision.
Yep.
Make a decision. What are you making a decision? That you and God are going to rewrite a new story. Okay. Now, what is your practical application? When you get off of here, sometimes within the next 24 hours, because research says if you don't take out action in 24 hours, you're not going to do anything. I would encourage you not to get up from your seat without doing this thing. You need to say, and you can ask the Holy Spirit to help you. What are my character deficiencies? Right? Just write them down. And I want you to hear this because everybody needs to hear this. Put this in the comments. You don't have to be perfect to be amazing. Because many times when people start looking at their deficiencies, they start equating that to I'm not lovable. Nope, right. I am lovable. I just have an opportunity to grow. What are my character deficiencies? You're going to pick one.
That's so important.
Just one.
Just one.
You're going to pick one. And you are going to begin to walk out how to intentionally change that behavior. And if you will work on that from here till December 31st, you will have growth in that area right there. And then next quarter, you can add something else.
Yep.
Now, there you go. Those are your practical steps. You got to make a decision. You need to identify a character deficiency. You need to get a plan to attack it. And you need to begin to work on that one. Everybody say just one. Because you know the Saints always try to overachieve. Just one. Because if you do one, if you try to do 15, you go get overwhelmed and you're just going to quit. One of the things I always say about the Lord, I appreciate the Lord for not telling me all the stuff that was wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that just up front when I gave my life to him, he didn't say we need to work on all these. I'm so glad. You know why? Because I would have quit. I am glad that he lets me get some mastery. And then he says, now let's prune this right here. So everybody do that. Those are your action steps.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If a person comes, I'm trying this. If a person comes up and says Facebook user, does that mean I have them blocked?
No.
Okay.
When we're on StreamYard, depending on which platform they're watching, they may have to give Facebook permission to put their name in. If they didn't realize that, they didn't do it. Yeah, it's okay. No.
I was like,
nope.
So you know how we always end, guys. Give us your one big takeaway. And Unika will be back with us next week. You should bring a friend. Next month. She'll be back with us next month. But what is your one big takeaway? Yes, someone put the questions and the steps in the comments. You just have to scroll up a little bit. Keyshawn put them in there.
Well, it depends on what platform. If they're on different platforms, they won't see them.
This girl's on Facebook, though, look like.
Yeah. Well, they could be on Facebook. They could be on my Facebook, Sean's Facebook, the church's Facebook. It just depends. But yeah, we saw them put in there. You may want to just tell them one more time what you want them to do.
Make a decision to rewrite your story.
So that's number one.
Do within 24 hours.
Okay.
What are my character deficiencies?
That's your second step. You need to figure out, and you don't just figure them out. Ask the Holy Spirit, what are your character deficiencies?
Ask him. Pick one and then attack it.
Yes.
Right? Someone said, would you recommend getting a therapist for this process?
I will say this. I got a therapist as a part of this process. And finding the right therapist is important because I believe that person should have biblical beliefs. For me, like I want them to be able to see things the same way that I see them. So I think if you go down the pathway to get a therapist, just choose well. And if you're not comfortable, even in that first appointment, fire them.
Yeah.
Fire them. If you are going to look to get a therapist, you have to make sure you pick the right one.
I think that's really important. And I think especially as believers, we want to be, because if therapy and coaching are similar to this, to do it well, you're going to let somebody look deep in your heart. And you don't want to give somebody access to your heart that's on an agenda for the enemy to then begin to plant things and pull you away from God. So to me, I think it's very important that your therapist shares your beliefs.
Yeah, I do too. And I think it's important when people hear the term about a therapist and a coach, that they really understand, at least for me, the difference in those. A therapist really is there to help you work through some past things, kind of help you with those 5 why am I showing up? But a coach's job really is to help you to be more forward thinking. Okay, I don't want, because I tell people, I don't want to hash your story over for the next year. I want to help you. Well, therapists will, but I'm not a therapist.
I'm
But,
not a
but as a
therapist.
coach, I will help you devise a plan and how we can move forward. So for some people, they may need both a therapist and a coach.
Yeah. I
Amen.
have 2 therapists and 1 coach.
you
So
go.
that is,
There you
you know.
All right, Unika, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Listen, if you want to bless Unika J, her Cash App is Unika J.
To Unika J everywhere.
She's Unika J everywhere, and she will be back with us next month. We're excited about it. And thank you, guys. And if this blessed you, leave what your takeaway was and share this with somebody and come back and watch the replay.
And
All
make
right?
sure you invite somebody next month on November the 14th, because you're not going to want to miss it.
Amen.
Unika,
Thank
we thank
you.
you so much for being here.
Thank you, Unika.
Thank you for having me. Such a blessing. Such a blessing.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.